For a film to work, it's crucial to know where the story begins and, more importantly, where it ends. We've all seen movies that had potential but were let down by an ending that was cliched, silly, or absurd. Another problem is some movies literally don't know when to quit. If the story is wrapping up, the movie should end there and then. With that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture, and these are 10 horror movies that should have ended 5 minutes earlier. Number 10. Halloween H2O 20 years later. 2 decades after Michael Myers tried to murder his sister Laurie Strode, the masked serial killer returns to his home of Haddonfield to launch a new killing spree. After Laurie stabs him and knocks him off a balcony, the authorities arrive and transport Michael to a coroner's van. Because Laurie knows that getting stabbed half a dozen times isn't enough to take down her brother, she decapitates him, ending Michael's life once and for all. We know Michael's reign of terror was far from over. In the sequel, Halloween Resurrection, we learn that Michael placed his mask on a paramedic after he fell off the balcony. Michael then fled the premises while Laurie killed the paramedic under the false impression it was her sibling. Not only is this explanation ridiculously convoluted, it contradicts the killer's MO. Michael has never relied on strategy or misdirection on this level. The Shape's evil plans boil down to walk up to person, kill him or her. If Halloween H2O ended after Michael was carted out in the coroner's van, the sequel wouldn't have to backpedal his death. Number 9. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Ending a movie on a jump scare isn't always a bad thing. As a concept, the final scene in A Nightmare on Elm Street is a great idea. After Nancy realizes the dream-controlling demon Freddy Krueger is powered by fear, she turns her back on him to prove she's not afraid of him. After he vanishes into thin air, we cut to a scene of Nancy's mother waving her daughter out of the house as she enters Glenn's convertible. As the car locks Nancy in and drives off by itself, she realizes that she is trapped in one of Freddy's dreams. The last shot has Freddy dragging Nancy's mother through the door's window before cutting to black. On paper, that ending works fantastically. In execution, it's unintentionally hilarious. When Freddy drags Nancy's mum through the window, the actress is replaced with a blatantly obvious dummy. You can even see her rubber arm crinkle. If the production couldn't make the dummy look realistic enough, they should have just left the scene on the cutting room floor. Number 8. Geralds Game. In a sex game gone wrong, protagonist Jessie finds herself handcuffed to a bed in a remote house after her husband suffers a heart attack. Unable to escape, she becomes dehydrated and starts hallucinating. She sees a deathly creature called the Moonlight Man and has flashbacks of when her father molested her as a child. When she finally breaks free from her restraints, she feels powerful for the first time in decades, giving her closure from her father's evil action. Months after she escapes, she sets up a charity for sexually abused women using the money her husband left her. Just when you think the film is about to end, Jessie hears a news report of a deformed giant on trial for eating human faces. Believing this person and the Moonlight Man are one and the same, she heads to the trial to confront him. The story ends with her marching out of the courtroom triumphantly. This entire confrontation with the Moonlight Man doesn't work, since it undercuts Jessie's story and jars with the movie's tone. Number 7. Maximum Overdrive. In Maximum Overdrive, an adaptation of Stephen King's short story, all of the world's technology gains sentience and goes on a killing spree. This leads to all sorts of crazy scenes, including killer vending machines, murderous lawnmowers, and swearing ATM machines. As admittedly silly as the premise is, the ending is so nonsensical it's mind-boggling. After Emilio Estevez's character blasts the Green Goblin truck, which serves as the final boss of the machines, a title card appears, stating the machine's self-awareness was due to being exposed to a UFO's laser cannon. If you think that's a dumb explanation, it gets worse. In the prologue, a text explains that the machines became sentient after the Earth was bathed in the radiation of a comet. So we have 2 explanations how technology came to life that contradict each other. What makes this blatant inconsistency all the more puzzling is that this film was directed by the original writer Stephen King. Despite the fact King wrote the novel, wrote the screenplay, and made the movie, the legendary horror author totally botched the conclusion. Number 6. Event Horizon. Paul W.S. Anderson's film begins with the Lewis and Clark spaceship being sent towards Neptune to retrieve a spacecraft called the Event Horizon. The Event Horizon utilizes wormhole technology to teleport across the cosmos, theoretically changing space travel forever. But when the original crew activated the wormhole, they were transported to Hell, causing the Event Horizon to become self-aware. After the Lewis and Clark crew enter the ship, the haunted vessel attempts to reactivate the portal, sending them to hell. Thankfully, the Captain Miller splits the event horizon in two, allowing his crew to escape in the ship's front before the wormhole activates. Although Miller is sent to hell, his crew survives. Also, you would think. In the final scene, we see that the event horizon that the survivors are on is also alive, implying they will suffer a grisly death similar to their companions. Considering the horrific things the characters experienced, and one of them survived being partially turned inside out, this ending feels frustratingly downbeat. It also cheapens Miller's sacrifice since he willingly went to hell to save his crew. After what Miller's crew endured, they deserved a happier ending. Number 5. Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark is an infamous video game adaptation, with Christian Slater playing paranormal investigator Edward Carnby. While pursuing a case, Carnby learns that a race of demons are entering our realm through an interdimensional gateway and are preparing to take over the world. In a final showdown, Carnby kills the demons and blows up the portal, cutting off their ability to enter our reality. Believing he saved the day, Carnby heads back to his home city. Unfortunately, the supernatural detective learns that the entire city has been abandoned. Wait, what happened? Where did everyone go? Well, while Carnby was duking it out with these demonic creatures, another bunch of monsters that were never seen or mentioned attacked the city, causing everyone to evacuate. What are these creatures? It's never explained. Number 4. Unfriended. In Unfriended, a group of friends are chatting on Skype until they notice an anonymous caller among them. This entity turns out to be the ghost of Laura, a girl who was maliciously bullied by every person in the Skype call. After a humiliating video of her was uploaded online, Laura took her own life. Throughout the film, the enraged Spectre uses her supernatural powers to kill each person in this call. Now, Unfriended isn't great and became dated very quickly. Does anyone even use Skype anymore? But the ending feels especially weak. In the final scene, Laura has killed everyone in the conversation save for her former friend Blair. The haunting spirit then uploads a video on Facebook proving that Blair filmed the clip that encouraged Laura to kill herself. Suddenly, Laura slams Blair's laptop shut and murders her. This ending feels cheap, since Blair would have received a much crueler fate if she was allowed to live. Now that everyone knew she was directly responsible for Laura's demise. Because she was killed moments after the video was uploaded, she only had to live with her shame for a few seconds. Number 3. The Blob, 1988. In 1988, Chuck Russell released a remake of the classic B-movie The Blob. The horror flick had some spectacular practical effects, mainly of the civilians being consumed and melted by the gelatinous sentient mass. Sadly, the movie was a box office bomb, ending its chances of a sequel. This is a shame, since The Blob unsubtly sets up a follow-up that never came to fruition. Halfway through the movie, a priest named Mika stumbles upon a frozen chunk of the Blob and places it in a jar. After the murderous goo is defeated in the climax, we cut to a scene of Mika performing a doomsday sermon, encouraging his subjects to believe that the rapture is upon them. He then heads to a private room where he gazes at the jar that contains a chunk of the Blob, implying he is preparing to release it on the world. Number 2. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. In I Know What You Did Last Summer, Julie and her friends are on the road when they suddenly crash into a fisherman named Ben Willis. To avoid getting arrested, they dump the body and vow never to speak of it again. The following year, Julie discovers Ben is hunting them down, preparing to pick them off one by one. In the final confrontation, Julie's boyfriend has Ben flung into the sea, seemingly to a watery grave. But in the last scene, we see Ben break into Julie's room and lunge at her. So she's dead, right? Nope! In the sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, it's explained that the conclusion of the previous film was a dream. But guess what? This movie has the same conclusion. During an epic showdown, Julie shoots Ben 8 times and drops his body in an open grave. But in the final scene, we see Ben once again break into Julie's room and seemingly kill her. First off, how is he alive? Secondly, did the filmmakers really do that ending again? Since these events aren't mentioned in the next sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer should have ended immediately after Ben was shot. Number 1. 10 Cloverfield Lane. There is no question that 10 Cloverfield Lane is a well-made movie. It's brilliantly shot, intensely atmospheric, and John Goodman gives the scariest performance of his career. Nevertheless, viewers were confused since it bared little resemblance to its predecessor. Cloverfield centered around a colossal monster terrorizing a city. This movie revolves around a woman named Michelle being locked in a bunker by a deranged man. Although he claims the surface has been infected by lethal chemicals, his erratic behavior encourages Michelle to try and escape. When she leaves the bunker in the final scene, she is attacked by an alien. After defeating the extraterrestrial, she escapes in her car, only to see a monstrously sized UFO in the sky before the credits roll. This ending feels so out of left field, since the story relied on slow, well-paced psychological horror up until this moment. Considering there is zero mention of extraterrestrials up until this point, you can understand why viewers were completely thrown off by this climax.